Greetings everybody around the world, wherever you may be. You're very welcome to this edition of Capricorn Radio. This is your host James Swagger, and for the next hour we'll be getting into some fascinating topics. But before I do, you can check out the links for the live shows at capricornradio.com. We also have a new members area there. You can check out the full MP3 archive at capricornmembers.com. I'm introducing a special lifetime membership fee for Capricorn members. This will entitle you to Capricorn radio shows and Capricorn TV interviews. To sign up for the members area, head over to capricornmembers.com, or equally follow the links on capricornradio.com. Don't forget you can also follow the Capricorn Radio YouTube channel, the Capricorn TV YouTube channel, and of course the Capricorn Radio TV Facebook group and Facebook pages. Or you can also follow what I do, James Swagger, in the James Swagger group on Facebook too. This is your host James, and I am delighted to be doing a megalithic show today. I've got my three friends on the call. I have Mr. B.Foerster, I have Hugh Newman, and I have A.Collins, all titans in the field of megalithic research and others as well. And we're going to get the latest updates from the guys. So let me just bring the guys in one at a time, I guess. Hi Brian, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, James.
Oh, great to hear you back again, Brian. We have Hugh Newman on the call as well. Hugh, can you give me your voice read, please?
I'm here for you, James.
Oh, great to hear you, brother. We will be seeing each other in Megalithomania. We're going to get into that as well a little bit on the show. Can't wait to see you soon for a TV interview as well, Hugh. I'm going to nail you down for a TV interview.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. And we have A.Collins back on the show as well. Andrew, are you there?
Yes, I'm fine. Yes, happy to be back. Lots of things happening, so raring to go.
Oh, excellent. Well, we'll keep the rotation for the audience, and wow, Brian, what's new with you? Where do I go? We got DNA analysis to talk about, Lebanon, Baalbek. Let's jump straight into some megalithic stuff first, I guess, Brian. How did you get on in Lebanon? Tell me about Baalbek, a place I've always longed to go.
Well, we had actually quite a trip. It was from Lima to Mexico, where we spent 6 days looking at Toltec and Aztec sites, then to the U.S., then to Egypt, where we spent 2.5 weeks, and then 4 days in Lebanon, the main focus being Baalbek, which is completely mind-blowing, I have to tell you. Just on the trip from Beirut and traveling through the valley to get to Baalbek, we were all very in deep anticipation, and the first thing we saw was the quarry with two massive 1,000-ton-plus stones lying there for us to observe. So we had a full day there, and it was we're going back every year, every April.
Oh, wow. What's your feeling there, Brian? Are these perhaps the biggest known megaliths we got at the moment?
Well, to put it in a nutshell, it seems that whoever was doing this initial construction, they were working with enormous blocks, some 400 tons, some 800 tons, some 1,200 tons. And with the two that are still in the quarry, I think what it tells us is that whoever was doing the initial work suddenly stopped work, and the site was left for probably thousands of years until the Romans decided to build things on top of it. But it is very, very mysterious, and I urge anyone who has the opportunity to go and visit Baalbek. It's very safe there. There's no, terrorism or anything like that. Lebanon is a very wealthy country, and we had a fabulous time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was my only concern. People always think about, Lebanon's a troublesome spot, but it's quite peaceful, you reckon, Brian?
Oh, definitely. We were 20 miles from the Syrian border, and, massive agriculture, large, wealthy farmhouses. Everyone was just doing their daily activity. Very little security was necessary. So a lot of what people see, on mainstream television is garbage. It's possible southern Lebanon is problematic, but that part of Lebanon is very placid and has Baalbek.
Oh, wow. Brian, like you mentioned, the Romans there, a lot of the archaeologists, they focus, the Romans built this temple and these massive, enormous megaliths. But like you say, the Romans came in later and just, it's like many ancient sites, Brian, they just adopted what was there.
Well, definitely. And even our tour guide, who was Lebanese, said that the reason why the Romans decided to build with, 400, 800, and 1,200 ton stones is they wanted to show the local people their amazing prowess at architecture. And as soon as I heard that, I just broke out laughing. Somebody obviously made that story up because they don't understand the fact that someone was there much farther back in time and had the capability of cutting out these huge blocks and moving them more than a mile and pushing them together with incredible accuracy.
Yeah. Wow. Tell me about this big giant obelisk, Brian, this monster. I mean, what's your feeling on that? Was that like the obelisks of Egypt?
Well, there are two giant stones still in the quarry, and they're, you have to spend almost as much time in the quarry as you do at the site of Baalbek itself because it tells you the story. One of them, again, about 1,000 tons, was cut from the side of the limestone bedrock outcrop and tumbled down and is in its original position. It's, it was later quarried by the Romans because you can see pieces that were removed, but the main one that some people call the pregnant mother or something like some odd name, it's still attached to the bedrock. And so you can see that, a lot of work was done on it, but it seems suddenly the site was abandoned because there's a massive crack on one side that I think the ancient carvers or builders were following in order to release the stone from the bedrock, but they never managed to actually remove it. And there has been recent excavation around that stone itself. So it allows you to see where some of the other giant stones, the impressions of where they were removed from.
Wow. Must be great to see the stuff in situ in the quarry, Brian.
Oh, it is. I mean, it's a real detective story. We saw evidence of, I think, machine marks involved in attempting to cut away the 1,200 stone block from its bedrock base. And again, this mysterious crack that's in the front and follows all the way down one side, but is not on the other side. I'm not sure if that was something done by those trying to extract the stone, or whether that was a natural crack that they were actually trying to work with in order to, at some point, remove this, this giant block that is remaining in situ.
I think that's the point to worth noting there, Brian. The bigger a piece of stone you're trying to carve out of the ground, the more chance you're running into hitting a natural crack.
Yeah, and actually the thing is that stone, as you can see in any photograph, it's at an angle. It's not, perfectly horizontal. So the top surface matches where this crack is underneath.
Wow.
Very well. And you can see where they were doing the undercut right where the crack is in order to try to liberate the stone, but they never managed to finish the job.
It's incredible. Do you see any comparisons between there and the unfinished obelisk in Egypt, in Aswan?
Actually, the technology used at Aswan is different. But another fascinating thing about Baalbek is that we had two geologists with us who had spent hours and hours at the Aswan quarry with us, and they were able to identify at least 100 pillars, if not more, of granite, which are in terrible shape in Baalbek, but they identified that stone as having come from Aswan, which is 1,000 miles away. So, I'm being conservative at saying 100 granite pillars. There may be 200.
Wow. That's incredible, Brian. Brian, do we attribute these to the Canaanites then? These megalithic structures in Lebanon? Is it safe to probably guess that?
I would think so. Actually, Andrew knows much more about the Canaanites and the so-called Nephilim than I do. But Mount Hermon, which is supposedly where the Nephilim descended and showed their presence on Earth, we saw as we were driving in the bus.
Oh, beautiful.
It's actually in the neighborhood, and the gargantuan effort involved in doing this work is not something that the Romans could have possibly done, I don't think. So it's one of those sites like Egypt where you find megalithic work, Peru and Bolivia where you find megalithic work attributed to very specific well-known cultures, but indeed there's a lot of evidence that a lot of this work in all of those countries was done thousands of years prior by mysterious people that we're trying to figure out.
Sure. Wow, Brian, so interesting. Let me move on, Brian. I'm going to come back to you and catch up on some DNA results as well. I love what you do, Brian. It's just it's fascinating because I know you've got this discerning eye from the knowledge of all the places you've been, and great to hear this feedback, Brian. I haven't heard it spoke about like that before in Lebanon. Hugh, got Hugh on the call next. Hugh, tell me about your travels. I believe you've been to Gunung, Padang. Tell me what's happening with Gunung, Padang. Tell me your feelings there, Hugh.
Oh my God, yes. Okay, yeah, Gunung Padang. Andrew and I went there after we did a tour to Angkor Wat, and then continued down to Java. And the Gunung Padang is a very strange place. I mean, we call it now, Java's Machu Picchu, because it's this hilltop site with these tens of thousands of blocks, it seems, these andesite polygonal kind of columns that almost look like they're kind of shaped like crystals all over the site. And we were there with Danny Hillman, and you could see this, the different levels going all the way down. We went right down the side of it. And some of his dating, I mean, Andrew will talk about this as well, but some of the dating there is quite remarkable, going beyond 8,000 BC. But even suggestions, he even got some parts of the dating which needs more analysis done, going back 20,000 years or so. So there's quite a lot going on there, and it's an absolutely fascinating place. It's just like shouldn't be there. It's just like, where is the culture? Where did this come from? We had a bit of an exciting journey a couple of days after. We went to try and find some other monoliths nearby, called the Gunstone or the Gun Rock, which actually Andrew will talk about his experience with that as well, I'm sure. But I think the Gunung Padang is certainly, it should be on people's wish list, just like Baalbek. It's a stunning place.
Tell me about the stones they had there, Hugh. They some like what are they? Basalt columns? They're like basalt rocks.
Well, they're actually andesite, which is the same as you find at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku.
Andesite.
So you actually get the same kind of crystalline rock.
Wow.
It forms naturally into columns like that. But they've obviously been moved and placed and piled up in a certain way. I mean, they're not huge. Some of the ones on the lower levels that round, I think the western side were quite large, that were at the lower levels. But it's the same type of rock you get at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku. Obviously, you find this in different areas around the world. And there's also acoustic. Some of the stones have been smoothed, so you have acoustic effects.
Really?
Which is another aspect of the site. But it's really, really fascinating, really unusual place, but there's a lot more to be done there. We filmed a whole load there, so we've got we've got one video we put up online on the Megalithomania YouTube channel, and we've got other ones we're going to do as well. But there's it's pretty vast site, and there's a whole kind of culture going back very, very long time ago around the whole area. This obsidian culture, which is what Andrew's been researching and writing about recently.
Wow, fascinating, Hugh. Hugh, what's your feeling? Why has this place only come to the forefront of research now? Why has it been hiding? I think it's been known about for quite a while.
Well, it's a bit like quite a few other sites, really. It's just recognising it, because it was known about since the early 1900s, 1914, I think it was first reported, but no one had any idea of the age of it. And because you do find sites, kind of similar to that in different, that part of the world, not quite to the extent of Gunung Padang. It really didn't come to the forefront until Danny Hillman, who's a geologist who lives near Bandung, the nearby, the main town there, that when his dating came out, it really kind of opened the door for that place. And now it's been endorsed by the government. There's an official visitor centre. You can buy tickets, that they're relaying the road and all this kind of stuff, which is great because it's preserving the site. It's giving it the energy it needs. But it's like, sites being discovered all around the world. I mean, look at Gobekli Tepe, for instance. I mean, that was only discovered a relatively short time ago. And, it was known about because some stones were found on top for a very long time. People thought it was some relatively, not very old Byzantine cemetery. So there's a lot more under the ground. and a lot more sites yet to be recognised for what they truly are. And I think this is the era where a lot of these revelations are going to come out.
The reports on the dates, though, Hugh, it's like another Gobekli Tepe, another kind of paradigm buster, where it's like this massive date. Some say 20,000, some say 16,000. I know the research still has to be done, but that time frame is now pushing stuff so far back. It's like,
well, the good thing is that there's a really professional, really thorough geologist working on that, Danny Hillman, who's really kind of going to push the science to be done properly there, and he's got a lot more research to do, that's for sure, before he can conclude, exactly, the eras it was being used in. But it's like, as we know about Gobekli Tepe, I mean, that's like a paradigm shifter. It's really changed everything. And that was carbon dated by German archaeologists, so there can't be any messing about with that one. And so, I mean, the thing with Gunung Padang, you don't get the fine stone relief carvings that you find at Gobekli Tepe or in Egypt or Peru, that kind of thing. It's very like, it's almost like the stones, it's been built, there's no evidence of culture there. You can't find any carvings. You can find these cut marks, which is something that fascinated me and Andrew, which we didn't even know about. I haven't seen any photos or film of this before we went there. These sort of cut marks, which you find, it's a very British and Scottish tradition at the megalithic sites, and Irish as well, which you probably know about yourself.
Sure.
And these cut marks all over, hundreds of these stones. But I've seen these cut marks, and I've talked about them and written about them over the years. You find them at Gobekli Tepe, on top of the pillars, in the bedrock, and various other places. You even find examples at Tiwanaku, in the Olmec world, even on Easter Island. And so it seems like either it's some kind of very strange natural thing, which is unlikely, or it's part of the tradition, part of the megalith builders' kind of signatures they leave at the sites. Incredible.
Some reports saying that it's actually just on the columns and the construction and the layout, it reminds me of the place in French Polynesia, Nan Madol, the way there's like evidence of these structures of layout and all these, maybe not on the same scale, but it seems to be like there's evidence of structure, but obviously lacking in art. Any similar?
Yeah. I've heard these comparisons. I've not been in Nan Madol yet, but I've seen a lot of film footage and photos. I know David Childress and Graham Hancock and others have been there. I am planning, and hopefully Andrew as well, to go there when we're in Southeast Asia next year, because there are flights that go there. But I want to have a look at that for myself and make the comparisons, because the thing about Nan Madol, it seems that like the stones kind of crisscross. You have one going in one direction and another layer going in the other direction, so it gives it like stability. And that was built into the sea. And it's almost like they built part of an island.
Yeah,
it's huge construction. But no one has any clue who really did that. I mean, that's been attributed to giants and things like this. So the comparisons have been made, but there are a few little anomalies you find at Gunung Padang which do match other sites. You get these cut marks. You have some of the building techniques. You have it's almost like hilltop, mountaintop temple, and also it's got several magnetic anomalies up on the site, which have been recorded by Danny Hillman. He's a geologist, so that's what he specialises in.
Sure.
And he's found these positive and negative magnetic anomalies right where these particular parts of the sites were said to be like the throne and the crown and all these other things. And so that intrigues me, because that's something that's been recorded all over the world at megalithic sites, as though they were deliberately building where these anomalies were to go into altered states or to even charge their seeds up. And also there's a fault line going across about half a mile away along the front edge of like the mountain hill. So, and that a lot of sites are often built with that nearby or in mind as well.
Incredible. If you're going to French Polynesia, if you're going to Nan Madol, you and Andrew, I'm coming. Put me on the plane with you guys. I don't care what it costs. I'm going there because I'm going on the Capricorn TV field trip for sure. It's my lifelong dream to go there.
Sounds like a plan. Expedition.
Yeah, definitely. You let me know about the details of that. Hugh, do you think this is a pyramid, Gunung?
Do I think it's a pyramid?
Yeah, it's like a man-made hill stroke pyramid. People are giving reports that it's badly weathered, but it was built on a man-made hill.
It's not. I mean, it's built upon the top of a natural hill, I think, and it's been then, there's been something put on the top of it as such. So I don't think it's a pyramid from the base upwards, like you find in Egypt or other places. But it's just one of the most intriguing places I've ever been to, and it's got this real magical kind of quality about it. Just the environment, the jungle environment. It's even got a sacred spring, a natural spring at the base of it, which was actually built around. So they were like, it was a used site. It was many thousands of years. But it's not technically. I don't think it's a pyramid. I mean, Andrew might correct me or have other opinions about that. But I don't know if it's a pyramid. It's more of a hilltop structure, much like Machu Picchu is a hilltop structure. That's not classed as a pyramid. But so it's such an unusual site. I think it's got its own kind of genre as such.
Sure. Andrew, wow, great responses there. Andrew, anything on the Canaanites in the Nephilim, the origins of Baalbek?
Well, I've got a couple of articles on andrewcollins.com all about the pre-Roman evidence of activity at Baalbek. And yeah, I mean, there is a lot of activity there. Probably going back at least to about 2500 BC. I mean, there's nothing really that goes back any further as far as our absolute knowledge of the site. But of course, you have these legends, and a lot of them suggest that it's got something to do with, Cain, or one of the sons of Adam building it, and that he was the origin of these people known as the Kenites. And that, they were giants, and, they invented the first smithy and the first metalwork and all the rest of it. But, I mean, how much these legends really actually relate to what's going on at Baalbek, I don't know. And although you have these incredibly large blocks, which, as Brian says, must be incredibly impressive, before jumping to too many conclusions, there is one possibility, and I mean, Brian will, perhaps answer this, and that's the fact that there are pillars actually within the Roman temple there of Zeus, which are many hundreds of tons in their own right, and to create those, you would have to have chiseled out blocks, many hundreds of tons, even more than those actual pillars, just like obviously Gobekli Tepe. There's 50-ton unfinished stones in quarries there, but by the time that they would actually reach the site and be erected, they would probably only weigh about 15 to 20 tons. But you have to have that amount of excess around them so that they can be chipped and carved properly into shape. So that's the only get-out clause at the moment. But Brian might have something to say about that a little later on. But if I can pick up the Gunung Padang for the moment. I mean, obviously, I second everything that Hugh said. I mean, it is an extraordinary site. I mean, and I mean, basically what you've got is a natural volcanic plug. I think that's what it is originally.
Sure.
Somewhere inside of which is a lava tube. So in other words, like a vertical chamber. And this seems to have been the focus of building activity on the site. And it would seem that a tiered structure was built around this volcanic plug using the andesite columnar blocks, which were probably actually obtained from the site itself and then reused and repositioned to create the monument itself. And these were built originally in tiers to create this pyramid shape actually on the hill itself. And this would seem to have been done as much as between 8 and 13,000 years ago, with evidence of activity going back even further, probably in association with this cave-like, lava tube. In other words, that would seem to have been the main focus of activity. And what they may have been doing is capping some kind of supernatural power that would seem to be associated with this cave-like structure. And the reason why they would be doing this is that directly in front of Gunung Padang is a mountain which is in fact a volcano known as Gunung Gede. And this is a volcano, a very active volcano. And it's quite clear that Gunung Padang, in its current state, and even within the lower layers themselves, they all have the same orientation directly towards this volcano, as if this volcano represents some kind of personification of a god, maybe a fire god or some kind of creator god or something like that. And that everything seems to be focused around the idea of control of the natural elements. The natural elements specifically around fire, which would represent, the status quo of the world. In other words, what they were doing there were rituals and activities that would keep the balance and harmony in the world, so that there was no longer volcano eruptions, cataclysms, and things like that. And I would say that something similar was actually going on at Gobekli Tepe. What I've said and written about there is that one of the main functions of Gobekli Tepe was to try and keep the status quo of the universe, to try and stop supernatural forces coming into the physical world, like comets and asteroids and things like this, to try and keep them at bay, or the supernatural forces seen as responsible for these cataclysms. And rituals, shamanic practices, all the rest of it would be done to keep this status quo. And so in other words, I think that there's a very similar purpose behind both Gobekli Tepe and Gunung Padang. Even though they are on opposite sides of the world, they were constructed probably around the same time, at least say 10 to 12,000 years ago in both cases, and in Gunung Padang's case, possibly even earlier than that, by thousands of years. So there is a commonality here. But the bigger question is, if there is a commonality, does it involve some kind of lost civilization? And that's really what we need to establish. We need to establish whether there is some kind of mother civilization behind this. Some people might call it Atlantis, Lemuria, or Mu, or whether you get flowerings of civilization in different parts of the world that open like flowers for a few thousand years and then close due to cataclysm, floods, disease, famine, things like this. And another flower, if you like, opens somewhere else in the world, and that also then continues for a few thousand years before closing itself. In other words, whether this is a cyclic thing or whether there is a single great lost civilization out there somewhere that's responsible for all of the engineering, technology and know-how and the beliefs and practices behind such, powerful places as Gobekli Tepe and Gunung Padang.
Incredible. Yeah, I think the more progress that's made and the discoveries are coming in faster. We'll talk about the Bolivian pyramid as well. But the more that comes up and the more that's researched, I'm definitely convinced of ancient global maritime civilization. I think there's too many commonalities, Andrew, without a doubt. Too many commonalities. Wow, Andrew, is there any evidence of alignments or magnetic anomalies there at Gunung Padang?
We went around the site with Danny Hillman, who's the geologist that's doing all the good work there. Without him, the greater antiquity of Gunung Padang, would be unknown. So we must thank him for all the work he's been doing there over the past 5 years. Hugh actually went round the site and looked at every magnetic anomaly with Danny, filming Danny, and having conversations about each different spot and testing it out with any equipment that we had with us. And there are a number, and Hugh might want to talk about that shortly. But as far as alignments are concerned, the main alignment, as I said, the main axial alignment of Gunung Padang is north-northwest towards the peak of this volcano called Gede. However, beyond that, in a time frame of probably around 8,000 to 9,000 BC, when it would almost certainly have been in use. The bright star Vega, in the constellation of Lyra, would have been seen to set directly down into Gede. Now, the importance about Vega is that it had formerly been a pole star between about 13 and 11,000 BC, and it is recognised throughout the Eastern Asia and Southeast Asia, even into Indonesia, as representing this goddess who is known as the Weaver Princess, who is seen to have forged the stars, forged the heavens, and created the Milky Way. And there's various stories about her losing the loom of her weaving, weaving equipment. And somehow this seems to be some kind of memory of the star Vega shifting away from the position of pole star. And even though Gunung Padang is actually south of the equator by about 6 or 7 degrees, Java was once part of a much larger landmass, which is generally known today as Sundaland. And this embraced a number of the Indonesian islands, including Borneo to the north. And so this actually straddles the equator. So if you went to the north of the equator by just 1 degree within Sundaland, you would see this incredibly bright star hanging over the horizon, around which all of the stars would turn at night. And that must have been an incredible sight. And you can understand why Vega may have become important, and why at the time when Gunung Padang was up and running, let's say between 8 and 9,000 BC, that this would have absolutely emphasized the significance of this star and this tradition to do with this goddess, this deity known as the Weaver Princess, who would seem to be not just some kind of supernatural, personage, but also it seems to be connected with sovereignty, and the embodiment within the queen stroke princess, and that somehow their lives were somehow bound up with the sovereignty of the land, in a way that is reflected in the heavens. And it's quite weird because at Gunung Padang, each of the different monuments you've got there, the different stone settings, the different rock piles, have all got their own name in Javanese. I actually asked a local guardian and guide to talk me through the whole spiritual map of Gunung Padang and how it relates to this mountain called Gunung Gede, how it relates to the whole landscape. And this is a marvellous, incredible journey, which I shall, be publishing at some point. And what's important is that right at the top, on the top terrace, there is a beautiful spot with this stone floor and the stone setting around it, known as the throne. And the throne, it said, is where the king would stand, and watch this volcano, and next to him would stand, the queen. And it was a site that Hugh and I realised was the most spiritual place there, and we went there to do meditations and things like this. And it's unquestionable that there is some right of sovereignty associated with Gunung Padang, something like almost like marrying, the queen or the princess to the land in a way which we know from Arthurian tradition in Western mysteries, within Britain, the idea that the king and the land are one, and that as one prospers, so will the other. Well, it seems as if something similar was going on in Java, in connection with Gunung Padang, and that it was believed, I think, that as long as, the reigning sovereigns were in good health, this volcano would not erupt. But if things started going bad within the royal family, then eruptions could take place, cataclysms could occur. So there's a lot there. We're beginning to flesh out what exactly Gunung Padang means. And on top of this, we're looking at discovering the material culture behind Gunung Padang, because you walk around there and you do not find stone tools. Whereas if you're at Gobekli Tepe, you find literally thousands of them everywhere, and they all date to the time of construction of Gobekli Tepe, let's say 8 to 9,000 BC roughly. And you can just, they're just there. I mean, obviously you're not supposed to pick them up, but you can't help but, pick them up occasionally. Mm-hmm. And it's not there at Gunung Padang. And that's something that I've said to Danny Hillman, you have to sort out. I wrote to him, since I've been back saying, you need a field expedition in the area to try and find evidence of a material culture. I mean, they found a couple of strange artifacts there, which are odd and very peculiar, but don't really fit any particular culture. But very close by to Gunung Padang, just in the next river basin, which is the Bandung Basin, there is a very, very ancient material culture that used obsidian.
Really?
To create these these stone tools. And these are found on the slopes all around what used to be a big lake, within the center of the Bandung River Basin. And that this lake started to disappear as early as 16,000 BC. I mean, all right, there were small parts of it that continued on until around 2000 BC, but the importance here is that this Bandung obsidian culture was up and running and very extensive and not far from Gunung Padang, perhaps 16,000 years ago. And there are also legends that link this weaver princess who I've been talking about mm-hmm. with the creation of the Bandung Lake, which suggests that these tales, these stories actually go back as much as 16,000 BC. And if that's correct, you obviously have a very developed culture existing around this lake long before it disappeared. And whoever this culture is, they cannot be unconnected with those that constructed Gunung Padang. It would be silly to suggest there was not a link. And this, I think, is the way forward. We have to try and understand who created Gunung Padang and who this culture were and where they came from. And that's what I shall be trying to do, in my next book.
Oh, fascinating, Andrew. I'm hooked already, brother. I'm hooked already. Super exciting. I can't believe the obsidian connection again, as most of...
Well, I mean, as soon as I saw obsidian, I my eyes lit up because...
I bet, Andrew, I bet.
Just all for the benefit, way around the world...
Yeah, a benefit for the audience.
The obsidian trail, because obsidian is a high status substance which is generally controlled by an elite group. Mm-hmm. So if you follow the obsidian trail, that will lead you to elites and the hearts of high culture, and I think that you'll find this all over the world. Obsidian is so valuable, so important, that it's the key to an awful lot of things about understanding the ancient mindset.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah, I know from our last conversation for the TV interview, Andrew, I was just fascinating with what you told me about the Gobekli Tepe location and the obsidian found in that locale.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's incredible stuff, Andrew. Incredible. Great to see you out there doing the research too, Andrew. A lot of respect for you as a researcher, because you go out in the field and you look for this stuff, as well as doing the academic and the book research too. Prolific, Andrew.
If you're going to write about these things, you've got to go to these sites. That's the thing. You cannot be armchair researchers.
Yeah.
That, and Hugh and myself, and obviously Brian, we go to these places. I mean, yes, we try and get there through organising tours and things like that, because we haven't got limitless money. We need to be able to get to that part of the world to do our research, and that's why these tours are so important. That the likes of Brian and myself and Hugh put together, whether they be to Gobekli Tepe, to Peru and Bolivia, which is coming up in June and July, or Egypt or Baalbek, or Southeast Asia, which is, where Hugh and I have just been to Cambodia, and then we stepped from Cambodia across into Java to see Gunung Padang. When we do these tours, that's why we do them. We encourage people to come with us to these sites. And a part of this is obviously that we can do the research as well.
Sure. Of course, it's the June tour for Peru. That's coming up pretty fast. And we have May and September for Gobekli Tepe. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. People can still come out with us in May to Gobekli Tepe. It's totally safe out there. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that contact us and say, oh, is it safe, with all the problems in Syria? Life goes on as normal in Turkey and has done, obviously, since the troubles began. And there will not be any troubles in eastern Turkey. Mm-hmm. So, people need to understand that. We can try and give them, this peace of mind to allow them to come out there because, everything going on as normal. And you'll see these incredible sites. If you are afraid of just a few things that are going on in another country, you'll never see anything. Sure.
I'm going to link up those tours on CapricornRadio.com and I'll stick them into the YouTube description when people are listening there as well. You'll get that on the members page as well. But exciting tours, guys. I'd love to see you guys together doing this. It's like a megalithic think tank, Andrew, to see you guys all together. Moving on to Brian. Brian, let's come back to Peru and Bolivia. What's happening with the new pyramid that's been discovered in Tiwanaku, Brian?
Well, I'm not sure about that.
Is it a pyramid? Is it a structure anomaly?
Well, I haven't seen any convincing photographs, and that's why it's important that Andrew and Hugh and I go there in June.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be there in May as well, so I'll be able to report firsthand. There are so many claims made about, about some of these ancient places from people who actually haven't been there. So what's very important is that we physically go and report on what we see.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do we know, though, Brian? Let's start with what we do know. It's an anomaly that's been picked up with radar. Is that right?
It could be. I honestly haven't paid much attention to it because there are so many claims that that go on through the internet about things being discovered. We do know that there are a number of structures, most likely underneath the Tiwanaku complex, that haven't been excavated.
Yeah. Of course, you've talked about it. There's a cataclysmic flood or some sort of a soil has covered a lot of stuff there, Brian, before.
Yeah, it has. The whole site has been buried in very fine red mud, high in iron oxide, which is typical of the area. And there was an ancient cataclysm of some kind that either came from Lake Titicaca or from another lake that no longer exists that swept over the site and buried Tiwanaku and Pumapunku in the distant past.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Brian, what's happened? I know you do not just a megalithic research too. What's happening with respect to DNA analysis and skulls and stuff like that?
Well, it's been a very long process, as everyone knows. It's taken more than 3 years, but at this point we have a very senior Peruvian archaeologist who is an expert on the Paracas Nazca culture, who is leading a study. He is preparing his proposal to the Peruvian government in order to be able to take samples from 5 skulls from the Paracas History Museum and send those samples, as well as hair samples, to a laboratory in North America that is ready and waiting to do analysis of them. And as well, hair samples will be sent to one of the world authorities on ancient hair in the United States to study whether the red hair of the Paracas is in fact genetically red, mm-hmm. or some type of dye. And so we are probably weeks away from being able to take the samples and send them off to the lab in North America for quite rapid, we think, analysis.
Wow. Fascinating, Brian. I had Aaron Judkins on the show yesterday telling me about his adventures in Peru, and I just think it's so fascinating with the red here. It just talks genetics, and when you talk genetics, it's almost like these. It's hard to think anything but hybrid or another race or another civilization or another group of people, if you want to call it that. These people stand out. The skulls, the hair. It's hard to think anything else, Brian.
Well, the amazing thing is it's not that amazing that I did, but I just finished writing volume 2 about the elongated skulls, focusing on Peru and Bolivia in terms of where these ancient people were located who did cranial deformation. I've been able to form quite a specific geographic pattern and related time frame. And the most intriguing thing about the Paracas culture, which is the main focus, is that even the archaeologists in Peru and elsewhere understand that prior to the Paracas culture existing on the coast of Peru, there were possibly some nomadic people living in the area, but all of a sudden, 800 BC, you have this fully blown culture existing there and living there with these elongated skulls and red hair up until about 100 AD, and then suddenly you have their collapse. And I think what happened was, I think the Nazca culture, which moved in and took over the area, were responsible for the termination of the Paracas elite members who had the elongated skulls.
Oh, incredible, Brian, incredible. Of course, you've got that tour coming up in June, Brian. Please take a moment, give us out your website and where people can catch the tour there as well, Brian.
Sure. My website is hiddenincatours.com.
And that's all linked up for the tour there as well, yeah?
Exactly. I just updated the front page today, and it has a listing. It's mainly focusing on our June tour. It has links to Hugh's website, Andrew's website, and just emphasizing that this will be the first time that Hugh and Andrew and I have been together in South America, and it gives all three of us a chance to share with our guests not only the elongated skull phenomenon, but also the intriguing megalithic sites of Peru and Bolivia.
Sure. You think there's a lot of commonalities at Gobekli Tepe and Peru from the photographs, the footage?
Well, that's something we're going to discuss in the field, and that's why it's great that both Hugh and Andrew will be able to share their most recent findings with us as we travel through the landscape of Peru and Bolivia.
Wow, sounds exciting, guys. I've been Peru. I left my heart there. It's such a magical place, Peru. There's just something about Peru. I love the people as well, and I love the culture. I love the climate. I love everything. I love the food. I love the ancient monuments, of course. And how long is the tour, Brian? 10 days? Is that right?
Well, the main tour is June 19th to 29th. And there's an extension before that, which is the Nazca Paracas area, including flying over the lines.
Excellent.
And then after that is Bolivia, where we explore places such as Tiwanaku and Pumapunku.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just came back from Switzerland with Eric von Daniken. I've been looking at his photographs of Nazca. It's absolutely mind-blowing. I actually wasn't aware just how many individual glyphs, animal figurines and lines there was, because what we see on television is like a sanitized version, Brian. We don't seem to see all the great scope of this place.
No, that's true. In general, most documentaries focus on maybe 6 of the geoglyphs. Of course, the spider, the monkey, the hummingbird. Mm-hmm. But what's more important on this trip is that people will have the opportunity, if they want to take an extended flight, and that takes them over what are called the palpa geoglyphs. And there are more than 1,000 of them on the tops of mountains, including various things that look like runways, geometric shapes, some animal figures. So the entire landscape that we call the Nazca geoglyphs actually goes all the way from Paracas on the coast of Peru in a southeasterly direction down and into Nazca. So you're talking hundreds of square miles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, fascinating, Brian. I really look forward to hearing some feedback on that as well in due course. You, wow, I know we've got Megalithomania coming up as well. Take a moment for that, Brian, Hugh. Tell me who's coming to Megalithomania. What are you going to be presenting there, Hugh? Gunung Padang, perhaps?
Well, I'm sure Gunung Padang will certainly get a mention. I think it's inevitable because I wasn't intending to talk about it, but inevitably that will come in because it's such a remarkable place. The conference obviously is, we do it every May. It's on the 9th of May this year. It's the one-day one with some tours and other things around it.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Patrick McManaway, who's like a master dowser geomancer, who's been doing some amazing tests with seed technologies, using, megalithic science to kind of develop that. Richard Heath, who's the brother of Robin Heath, is going to be there talking about sacred number.
Oh yes,
he's very much in with John Michel, and it's going to be actually his annual memorial lecture we do it at the conference. Jim Vieira's coming over from America to share his research on giants and New England sites. Chris H. Hardy, who's done the book The Sacred Network and DNA of the Gods. Myself, obviously, and Peter Knight, who's looking at the comparisons between Christianity and megalithic sites. And we do this every year. Obviously, we do a conference. Me and Andrew do one in the autumn, in October or November this year. Every year, in fact, so far. Hopefully around November the 7th or 8th. That's going to be with Graham Hancock and Andrew, myself, and some other very special guests. That's in London.
That's the Origins conference.
That's the Origins conference. Yeah, we do keep fairly busy. And then after Megalithomania, obviously there's the Gobekli Tepe mini tour Andrew and I are doing, and then June we pop over to Peru and Bolivia and do all that. So quite a lot going on this year actually.
Wow.
But the time is now really. We have to kind of get out to these places and explore, and explore as much as we can.
Oh, great. I've had Chris Hardy on the show actually before, and Richard Heath, I actually have his book. I've read the book, Lords of Time there. Fascinating book. I've been looking forward to meeting Richard here as well. Because I'm going to Megalithomania, my first Megalithomania conference. I'm really excited about it. So
Excellent.
Looking forward to catching up with you there as well for some TV stuff as well. But what's happening in the world of giants and research? I know that was a great first season you did with Jim Vieira and the Vieira brothers. What's happening with the giants research? Is there anything happening in terms of press in America?
Well, there's a huge amount going on. What's happening is what's really interesting is that more newspaper archives are being let out onto the internet. And so what's happening is more and more are being discovered. It's becoming this kind of insane kind of catch-up, trying to keep up to date with all the ones that are being discovered. And there's a whole bunch of budding giantologists on the case now who are looking through all the papers for us. We've got some researchers who work with us. A guy called Micah Ewers is based in California. Mm-hmm. Andrew and his colleague Greg Little are doing some excellent research, which they outlined in Path of Souls. And there's some other stuff. We're actually meeting up with Andrew and Greg. Me and Jim are in a couple of weeks in America to look at some sites.
Excellent.
And to sort of put our heads together about a few ideas. So that should be quite. We'll have to give you the feedback on that after it's happened, of course. But there's Jim and I are almost finished our book. We're just working on the last parts of the book. We're hoping to get it out for Megalithomania, but it's unlikely, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. But it'll be out soon after. But there's such a vast amount of research and data, and it's just finding the bones, the teeth, the skulls. That's what we want, and this is what the TV shows really help with. It's put us in contact with a whole bunch of people who watch the show on History Channel, and they've actually contacted us and said, "Look, we've got stuff we can show you." So we're going to follow some of that up over the next few months. Towards the end of the year as well, and see if any revelations come out about that. But the fact that you've got the Smithsonian actually digging up very large skeletons, I think 17 accounts of that, you have to kind of realize it's a very real thing. It's not just made up, which a lot of the skeptics are trying to say nowadays. There's some particular ones, I won't mention the names, but they're trying to discredit the whole phenomenon when, if you look at just the basic facts, it's an incredibly difficult one to deny. Even, because you get tall people nowadays, you get people with 2 rows of teeth nowadays. It's not that unusual. But back then in North America, there seemed to be a whole race of these giants who were pretty phenomenal beings.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I actually caught a documentary Well, it was about Sardinia and the legend of giants there and the megaliths, and the guy had a tooth, and again there was a cover up. The tooth went missing. As soon as it goes into the museum, stuff's never seen again. Oops, we lost it, type of thing. It seems to be the operating system. Stuff gets lost. I've never known so many. I think putting stuff in a museum sometimes is the worst place you can get in.
Well, the problem with North America, there's a couple of different things. First of all, you've got the Smithsonian involved, and there seems to be a lot of disappearing skeletons and skulls with them. There's debate as to whether it's a conspiracy or whether it's just ignorance. But there's so many accounts, even the ones they've kind of dug up themselves, and they're still in denial about it up to the present day. And then in 1990, the NAGPRA Act, the Native American Graves Repatriation Act, I think I've got that slightly wrong, came in, and that was a collusion between the Native Americans and the government to remove all Native American remains from public display. So hence, every single giant skeleton or skull or tooth or anything that was on display, boom, it gets reburied. So it's gone. So you've got the Smithsonian problem you're dealing with, and you've got NAGPRA you're dealing with, and it's actually illegal to even actually show anything in a book or on TV or anything like that. Show any of these remains. So even though there's a debate about these giants, whether they were ancestors of the Native Americans, whether there was some other diffusionism going on in prehistory, you have a lot of red-haired giants in the West and some in the East, going back 8,000 or 9,000 years. It's a real tricky subject, and all we can do is share the accounts publicly in book format on TV or whatever we can do, and hopefully the truth will emerge naturally.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds clandestine and surreptitious to me, Brian. It stinks of it, but that's just my own personal opinion. This whole stuff disappearing in museums, and like I say, I mean, who would want that evidence out there? I mean, if there was another group acting in history, I mean, the archaeologists, it would just shake the foundations of all archaeology. It really would. I think the best thing they would do would put it in a box and label it and hide it.
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, but it's like anything that's suppressed or covered up. It makes you want to investigate it, doesn't it? So I think this is one of those classic ones. It's like Brian's research on the skulls down in Peru and Bolivia. It's the same with these giants in North America. I mean, it's a sort of crazily kind of intriguing subject. It seems to have it's almost like a spell that was put over it. Stop people researching it and talking about it, and that spell's been broken. And now everyone's going, right, okay, let's get into this. Let's sort of challenge what's going on here and see if we can expose it. Because to me, it's like with the megalithic sites or anything. It's like these are our ancestors. These are our relations going back, hundreds or thousands of years. So it's actually our heritage, our legacy. So we need to kind of honor that a little bit, and rather than try and suppress it and let people suppress it and cover it up, actually, it's a human right, in my opinion, and we need to kind of expose it and get it out into the mainstream the best we can.
Very well said, Brian. Very well, Hugh. Sorry, very well articulated. It is our heritage. It's our own human journey, and whatever branch of human we're talking about, it's our own story, our own legacy, and we're living in a time of history and research now that's just cutting edge. It's cutting edge history all the way now. I've never seen history so much alive. Hugh, please give us a moment to give us at your website. We can catch the tours that we've been talking about, plus the conference.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's just www.megalithomania.co.uk. So it's megalithomania.co.uk. Everything's on there. There's also, you can go to HughNewman.co.uk. And that just takes you to my page on the Megalithomania site, and just Google Megalithomania or Hugh Newman, and you'll find everything we're up to.
Excellent, and great information on the whole tour there, and who's who, and the bios on yourselves. Great to see all that there, Hugh, Brian and Andrew together. Really, really exciting. I'm looking forward for updates on that as well. Just finish up with you, Andrew, I guess. What's new for you with the Denisovans, the hybrids, that type of research?
Well, this is another area that's opening up so much now because of the DNA research that's being done on early human remains by the Max Planck Institute in Leipzig in Germany. And basically what they've been doing is testing the nuclear DNA and the mitochondrial DNA of, Neanderthals, the Denisovans, and any other, really early fossil remains going back at the moment to around 450,000 years ago. And what this is doing is giving us a much clearer picture of, not only these different archaic humans as they're known, but how they mixed with each other, and how they quite clearly interbred to create hybrids, whether that be Neanderthal human hybrids, Denisovan human hybrids, or there has actually been a toe bone found in the Altai Mountains, which they've examined, and it has the DNA of 4 different types. That's Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and a archaic human that they don't even know what it is because they can't match it against anything.
Incredible.
It could be Homo erectus. That's the best option at the moment. And Homo erectus is one of the earliest forms of human that supposedly died out, maybe about 500,000 years ago. But it is known that a form of Homo erectus continued on in Java down till about 25,000 BC. And that there's evidence that they continued to exist in Java, possibly even in parts of China. I mean, recently a huge great jawbone was found dredged up by fishermen off the coast of Taiwan. And it's so strange that, they don't really know, what type of human it's come from. And again, the best guess is that it's Homo erectus. But if it is, it's very late, possibly as late as 15 to 20,000 years ago. So, there's all of this melting pot of activity. And we need to understand how any of this might have affected the rise of civilization. Because it's okay being a Neanderthal, we're told that they are, that they were sluggish, they were brutes, they were this and the other, but we now know that's not true. We now know that they painted caves, they adorned themselves in feather coats, they used musical instruments, and almost certainly they had some kind of religion involving the burial of their dead. They could speak probably little different to you and I, something that again is only very recently been confirmed. And they had their own different mindset, a mindset that was quite different to Homo sapiens. I think in the early days we were probably survivalists. We were territorial. We'd go in, bash the people on the head and take over their lands and then just move on and do this. Whereas Neanderthals have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, developing their culture, their way of life. And it seems as if they had a strong attraction to the moon, and to the idea of women's cycles, and its relationship to the moon, and may have developed this into some kind of religion. Well, the fact is that when Neanderthals came together with humans, it created almost like a new type of human being, something that had completely different mindsets. One, the dreamy, sort of otherworldly mindset of the Neanderthal, but also the survivalist, rationalist side of the Homo sapien. And it seems as if huge advances actually occurred once this hybridization took place. Now, we Homo sapiens, interbred with the Neanderthals in the West, but in the East, in Eastern Asia, it was the Denisovans. And we know that the Denisovans, as much as 40, 50,000 years ago, from evidence coming from this Denisova cave in the Altai Mountains, were producing incredibly high, items of high culture, including these bracelets in this green stone known as clitorite, which look like something that might have been produced just a couple of thousand years ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're just extraordinary. And more than this, the teeth that were found in connection with the Denisovans are of large size, and there are various accounts that suggest that when they were first found, it was thought that they belonged to a cave bear or something because they were so large. And there is other DNA evidence that suggests that the Denisovans were, in fact, of extremely tall in nature. They may well have been giants, and that the admixture of them and Homo sapiens could well have created the giants which roamed the land, particularly in North America, but almost certainly in South America and, of course, in other parts of the world. And that these giants may well have been Denisovan human hybrids. This is a very exciting prospect. It's something that I wrote about with Greg Little in the book Path of Souls last year, and I shall certainly be writing a lot more about in a new book which has a working title of Hybrid Origins, which will feature Gunung, Padang, Denisovans, and much more of what we've been talking about today. So, this is the area that I'm looking into now, because it does seem as if when hybrids are created, civilization follows very quickly.
Sure. Do we have migratory routes from Denisova cave, obviously probably heading southwards down in towards Turkey?
Well, that would obviously be the western migration. Yeah. And yes, there is. And it goes basically from the Altai Mountains through the Ural Mountains into central Russia, where as early as 30 to 40,000 years ago, there were incredibly advanced communities that had astronomically aligned longhouses made of wood and a mammoth bone. They had agriculture. They had a fully developed mother goddess cult, with these beautiful Venus-like statues. They had tailored clothing. They had communities which wouldn't be out of place in medieval times. And these people were known as the Gravatians. And their main centres were in central Russia, and also in the country that we now know today as the Republic the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, former Czechoslovakia. These are their two big focal areas. And what's clear is that the heart of these are Neanderthal human hybrids. And the descendants of these peoples went on to be known as the Swiderians. And the Swiderians, whose culture stretched from the Carpathian Mountains in the west right the way across to the big rivers of Russia, like the Volga and the Don River, almost certainly their descendants were the ones that came south at the end of the last ice age and entered into Anatolia, and I think became the power elite behind the construction of Gobekli Tepe. Mm-hmm. That seems to be a pretty sensible solution to what was going on in Gobekli Tepe. So there is a link between Gobekli Tepe via Russia to the Altai Mountains, and from there eastwards through Siberia, places like Lake Baikal, across into North America, and southeastwards into places like Java, where we have Gunung to Padang. So there is actually a link behind all of these cultures. And I think that one of the keys to understanding the lost civilization, if you like, is hybridization. Sure. That is, I think, the key. And that's why I'm looking into it so strongly now.
Wow, fascinating. And of course, we can catch all this at andrewcollins.com. Of course, you'll get the Origins Conference there. I'm really excited about that, Andrew, to see that on again. Yourself and you there, and Graham as well, making an appearance.
Yeah. I mean, it's not absolutely finalised yet. Hugh and I are working on it as we speak, to try and finalise it. So just watch this space on all of our websites regarding how we go there.
Okay, so I'm going to link all the sites on the YouTube description and the Capricorn
Thank you.
Radio and members page, capricornradio.com. Guys, absolutely fascinating talking to all of you guys. Wow, what a megalithic roundtable that was. Such exciting news as well, and such exciting research going on. I really thank you for all your time today, guys.
No, it's our pleasure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great talking to you, James and crew. Good.
You can learn the QHHT process by coming to one of the classes. The problem is I have stopped taking the long trips. I was doing many trips a year to all the countries of the world. These were long 14, 16-hour flights, and we were having 100 people in each class in all these different countries. But it began to take a toll on me that I don't want to be traveling that much out of the country anymore. We were still doing classes in the United States too, but we decided I would no longer take the long trips out of the country. So we're only doing one live class a year in America. So we're going to do one a year in America. And we have advanced classes that are available. We're still doing those all over the world. But if you want to take the class and you can't do it live anymore, the class is available online. It was a filming of an actual class that I did. And you're getting the same instructions that you would if you were sitting in the class. The only difference is you're not there to ask questions. But all the students ask lots of questions, and we always say everything you'd want to know has already been asked anyway. So online you will get the same instruction as you would in a class. And that's available. And many people are taking that now. And we now have this class translated into Chinese and Spanish. This is going to be available for those people in those countries to take the class in their own language. And we're also putting it into other languages. So it's growing, and this is another way to do it if you can't come to a live class. But I have to, well, the ones I work with, they said, let technology take over. Then rather than me traveling all over the world, let technology take over. You have the equipment, use it. So we'll see how this is working out. The online class is doing very well. You contact DoloresCannon.com. I encourage anyone interested in quantum healing hypnosis to please take advantage of the training that is now available online. You can find it through my website, DoloresCannon.com.